Well, Adam, welcome very much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, we're honored to have you at the Wharton India Economic Forum and at the Knowledge at Wharton as well.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming. So let's start off with your recent trip to India. You were just in India.
I was there for the entire month of March.
And was that your first trip?
It was my first trip, yeah.
So impressions. Give us your
It
impressions.
was unbelievable. Our company has been operating in India from New York City, but our user base has been in India for about a year, but none of us had been there. And so in my head, India was a concept, and it wasn't reality until I actually stepped off the plane, and immediately the sights, smells, sounds just hit you, and it's such a different place. I've done a lot of traveling in my life. Nothing really compared to sort of the entirely different world that India is.
It's a sensory overload.
Absolutely.
Right. So, and you were there for a month.
Yes.
And you were there for Ignighter. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Ignighter?
Sure. I was there for Ignighter, that's right. That's my startup. It's a group dating website, which basically means you and your friends make a profile together. You go find another group and you all go out on a group date. And so the idea is that it's a safer, less awkward, more fun approach to online dating.
And you had never been to India, none of your partners had been to India. What happened?
We had never been to India, none of our partners had been to India, and we started the company really with the idea of building something for ourselves. And we were 20-somethings living in New York City, wanting a better way to meet new people, but what happened was the site took off in India. And so over the course of 2009 and into 2010, while we were focusing on markets like New York City and Philadelphia and Boston, we would go into our analytics and see that places like India and Malaysia and Singapore and Indonesia were just growing like crazy.
Right. And so you thought? So
at first we thought, that's interesting, but it's not our focus, so we ignored it. And we said, well, we'll track the growth, but we won't focus on it. And that only lasted a few months because the growth continued and it started to get, to really ramp up to the point where we looked at each other and said, guys, what are we doing? We don't know exactly why, but there's something really working here. And so that's when we decided we're going to change our focus and really figure out what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong and continue to optimize our site for these markets.
Right. So what were you doing right in India, you think?
I think the model is right. I think the fact that we're a group dating website is right in India. And I didn't know this at first, and I'm learning it more and more now. And the more people I talk to, people like yourself, people like who grew up in India, people who just understand Indian culture, I get the same universal story. They say, I tell them the story, and I say, it was really a surprise. It was an accident, and to them, it's a no-brainer. They say, of course that makes perfect sense. That group dating is working in India. Culturally, that's just a perfect fit, and so that's what we're learning.
Yeah, and can you also give us some of your impressions about the entrepreneurship ecosystem in India? Now, obviously, you were here for a few years working on your startup. I imagine other startups in the past. And now you've just come from India. I imagine met other entrepreneurs, met other VCs, users, etc. Can you give us some sense of how you perceive the entrepreneurship ecosystem in India?
I think it's just starting to really take off right now. I was able to meet with some really great entrepreneurs. And I think what it's going to take is a couple big exits in order for, the US, Silicon Valley, even New York has had some really big successes. And sites like Make My Trip, for example, in India, are those type of events, that kind of, an IPO, major exits are the kind of thing that are going to get the smartest people in India, the most driven people in India to question, taking the sort of traditional path after school and really, trying something new and realizing that there's big opportunity in taking a risk. And I think that that's just starting to happen now.
Yeah, but did you think that there was now starting to be a lot of support around entrepreneurs who did take the plunge?
Absolutely. I actually met with a lot of great VCs, and I don't know I don't know the history as well of the VC world in India, but from what I understand, it's a pretty nascent environment, and there's a ton of early stage money out there looking for great companies, and I've been able to work with, not necessarily take money from, but work with some of these VCs in India, and the type of support they're providing to startups, even startups they're not investing in, but is tremendous. Then the amount of time that they're putting into these startups is really amazing.
Right. So what's your future plan in India for Ignighter?
Our future plan is to really continue to understand, like I said, what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. That's the first step. We're in the process of opening an office there in Mumbai.
In Mumbai.
And hiring people. We want to hire a product team in India. We have our first hire. We're just completing that process right now. And really, the first steps are going to be looking at our brand identity in India. You know, like I said, I mean, the site, the brand, everything associated with the site was built for a U.S. audience.
Right.
So some things happen to be working really well in India. We're starting to figure out what those are. And some things I think are not going to be working well in India, and we need to sort of identify those and change them. And from there, I think we'll look to continue to step on the gas and grow.
Yeah. So if I can bring you back to your own personal story. So you grew up in New Jersey.
Yes.
And, you know, here you are working on a startup that's doing really well in India.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about your personal trajectory, how you actually took the plunge into entrepreneurship?
Sure. So entrepreneurship was always an idea in the back of my head, but it was never something that I knew I wanted to do. I grew up in New Jersey. I went to Northwestern University in Chicago, majored in film. I actually always thought I wanted to be a writer for TV.
Okay.
And
there's TV in India?
There's TV in India, exactly. So after school, I started working in television. But a college buddy of mine who was also living in the city, he was working in finance, I was working in television. We started to throw around this idea. You know, we looked at our social life, actually, and realized that every weekend was becoming the same. It was the same group of guys going out with the same group of girls, and we were, you know, the early 20s. We wanted to meet new people. We wanted to meet women. We really were sort of afraid and turned off by the existing options on the web. They were, you know, they seemed really just not the way that we would organically go out and meet people to create this sort of blind date. And we realized we like going out with each other. We feel comfortable going out with each other and trying to meet new people. And so we started to talk about this idea of group dating, and the more people we spoke to in our demographic, the more people said, that idea is brilliant, that's such a good idea. And it got to the point where we couldn't stop thinking about it. And at that point, once you know that you're become obsessed with a concept, or you become obsessed with a potential business, there was no choice. We had to dive in.
Right. And so you just knew, because you were getting obsessed with this idea, that there was no other option.
Yeah.
There was no way you were going to go become a TV writer at this point.
No, I mean, I figured, you know what, I'm going to give this a chance. If it fails, then I'll go back to maybe becoming a TV writer. But I wanted to give it a shot.
Yeah. So now, given the fact that you're running a group dating site, do you envision yourself becoming a dating guru at some point, or have you already become one?
I don't think I'm a guru at anything, but
I believe you write for the Huffington Post.
I have written a little bit for the Huffington Post. I do. I mean, I think I'm understanding a little bit about dating. I think really I'm going to become an Indian dating guru.
So share some tips. So in the Indian dating scene, what are the right things to do? What are sort of the no-nos in Indian dating?
Let me see. So I think Indian people need to be a little bit more bold. I think in the past.
On both sides, guys and girls.
On both sides, yeah. I think it's going to be harder to convince the girls to be bold, but even the guys need to be more bold. I know, you know, both sides. I'm convinced after my month in India and after talking to our customers, just like young people in the United States, young people in India want to go on dates. They want to meet new people, but they've grown up in a little bit of a more conservative environment that makes them a little scared to initiate that conversation. So there's really nothing, my tip is there's nothing to lose by initiating a conversation, meet new people, and see where it goes. I think if you can just take the plunge and say hello to people, you can see where you can go from there.
So who's this target customer in India?
The target customer right now, our average age on the site is about between 23 and 24 years old. It's recent college grads. It's a lot of the sort of urban young people. So the biggest cities in India are where we find most of our users.
Right. And so given that, you know, you're launching an office, you're hiring people in India, and having just come back, what do you see as your main challenge in India going forward from a management perspective?
I think operating a company on on two sides of the world is going to be a challenge. And India is by far our biggest market and our primary concern, but it's also not our only market. So we have had success, and we're having a lot of early success in other markets on that side of the world. So I think being able to reconcile handling a business that's operating in many different countries with many different cultures is going to be our biggest challenge.
Yeah, and do you plan to move to India anytime soon?
I don't know if I plan to move there. I plan to spend a lot of time there. Probably these month-long trips are what I'll do, maybe once a quarter. And if needed, then I'm ready to move there, but we'll see. I loved it. I loved my trip there.
Yeah.
I would love to spend time there.
Sure. Well, Adam, it's been great. This was a pleasure talking to you about the Indian dating scene and also your startup.
Thanks.
Good
It's
luck
been
with
a
your
pleasure.
venture going forward.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.